Hello, my name is Gilbert Resendez. I'm a Broadband Program Specialist here with NTIA, and I will be your moderator and host for today's webinar. I did want to jump on here before we get started to let folks know that if you are using the phone option for your audio on this webinar, there is a portion of the pre-recorded webinar that you will not be able to hear. The solution that we have is that you would, if you want to continue using your phone for audio, you would have to download the GoToWebinar app from the Google Play Store or Apple App Store or whatever store you use for your smartphone. If you're using a smartphone, we've provided some instructions here on the screen for you to find that. And we should be getting here started shortly, so thank you for joining us. We look forward to this webinar.
Hello, and welcome to today's Broadband USA webinar series on NTIA's grant programs authorized under the Consolidated Appropriations Act of 2021. My name is Gilbert Resendez, and I will be your moderator and host for today's webinar, covering the Connecting Minority Communities Pilot Program. Today, before we get started, I'd like to go over a few housekeeping notes. First, please type any questions that you may have throughout the webinar in the Q&A box located on the right-hand side of the GoToWebinar console. We have information on all of our grant programs that were authorized under the Consolidated Appropriations Act on the Broadband USA website under the Grants page. There you will find information on not only the Connecting Minority Communities Pilot Program, but our other two grant programs as well. Finally, a recording of this presentation, copies of the slides, and a transcript will be available on the Broadband USA website under Events, Past Events, on or before August 4th, 2021. I would like to introduce our presenters for today's webinar. First, we are here to welcome Kevin Hughes, a Broadband Program Specialist with NTIA and who works on our Connecting Minority Communities Pilot Program. I am also joined today by Mr. Scott Woods. Scott is a Senior Broadband Program Specialist here at NTIA and leads the Connecting Minority Communities Program. We are also joined today by Ming Qiu with the NIST Grants Office and Mr. Tim Moyer, the Director of Data and Mapping with NTIA. And I, like I said earlier, am your moderator and host, Gilbert Resendez. I work at NTIA with our state programs on the Broadband Infrastructure team, and I'm happy to be moderating today with the Connected Minority Communities team. Next, I'd like to go over the agenda for today's presentation. First, we'll kick it off with an introduction and overview of the Connecting Minority Communities Pilot Program, led by Mr. Kevin Hughes. Then Scott Woods will give an introduction of the Connecting Minority Communities team. Mr. Ming Qiu will then give an overview of the NIST Grants Office and provide some updates from NIST. Mr. Scott Woods will then take the mic and go over our CMC Anchor Community Dashboard and provide another demonstration. Next, Mr. Tim Moyer will introduce our new Indicators of Broadband Need Map. And then I will close it out with a call for merit reviewers and discuss the next steps of the program before opening it up to Q&A. Without further ado, Mr. Kevin Hughes.
Thanks, Gilbert. My name is Kevin Hughes. I'm a Broadband Program Specialist here at NTIA, working on the Connecting Minorities Communities Pilot Program grant. And my job today would be to give you a brief overview of our grant. So NTIA published the Connecting Minority Communities Pilot Program final rule in the Federal Register on Tuesday, June the 15th. And now the final rule establishes the regulations for the program as required by the Consolidated Appropriations Act of 2021. And this lays out the programmatic scope, eligibility criteria, and general guidelines for the program. Now, NTIA will publish the Notice of Funding Opportunity, or the NOFO, on grants.gov. And this will provide even more details regarding the CMC eligibility guidelines, application instructions, and program requirements. So who can apply? Who's eligible? Well, historically Black colleges or universities, or HBCUs, tribal colleges and universities, TCUs, minority serving institutions, MSIs, and consortiums led by HBCUs, TCUs, or MSIs that include a minority business enterprise or tax-exempt 501c3 organization. So when it comes to funding, how much is available? $268 million. When we talk about program eligibility, CMC eligibility criteria and meeting the greatest unmet financial need are two very important things that you need to consider in your application. So what's the purpose of the funding? What can you use the funding for? Well, you can use it to purchase broadband internet access service or any eligible equipment, or you can use it to hire and train information technology personnel. And this would be for the educational institution to facilitate educational instruction and learning, including through remote instruction, which is really important during these COVID times. Or you can use the funding to operate the minority business enterprise, or to operate the tax-exempt 501c3 organization. And again, additional program information will be provided to you in the NOFO when it's released, which is expected to be early to mid-August. So when we talk about the funding purpose, again, the funds can be used to purchase broadband internet access service, including the installation or upgrade of broadband facilities on a one-time capital improvement basis to increase or expand capacity and connectivity at your university or institution. You can also use the funds to purchase or lease eligible equipment and devices for student or patron use. And you can use the funding to hire and train information technology personnel who are part of the eligible institution, the MBE, or tax-exempt 501c3 organization. Now, when it comes to funding priorities, these are the priorities that were set by Congress, and I'll just mention them really quickly. With regards to funding allocation, at least 40% of grant funds awarded will be made to HBCUs. At least 20% of all grant funds awarded to eligible recipients must be used to provide broadband access and/or devices and equipment to students. Eligible recipients that receive a grant to provide broadband internet access service or eligible equipment to students must prioritize students who are in need. There's no match required for the funding, and a 2-year period of performance is also required. Program evaluation and data collection requirements will also be conducted by NTIA as part of the review process. And so at this stage, I'm going to hand it over to Scott Woods, who's our Senior Broadband Program Specialist here at NTIA and our lead on the CMC program team. So Scott, take it away.
Hello again, everyone. My name is Scott Woods, and I'm a Senior Broadband Program Specialist here with NTIA and have the pleasure of serving as the team lead for the Connecting Minority Communities Pilot Program. At this time, it is my pleasure to introduce the CMC project team. We have a great collection of individuals and professionals with various backgrounds, from the public sector to the private sector, to philanthropic organizations, who will serve as your federal program officers to guide you through the Connecting Minority Communities Pilot Program. And so without further ado, let's start the introductions. I'll start by introducing myself. Again, my name is Scott Woods. I'm a Senior Broadband Program Specialist and CMC Team Lead here at NTIA. I have a bachelor's degree from Morehouse College, the Morehouse College in Atlanta, Georgia, a master in public policy from American University right here in Washington, D.C., and a law degree from the Howard University School of Law, again, right here in Washington, D.C. Prior to joining NTIA, I served as an associate attorney in a law firm here in DC, where I worked on a number of regulatory, legal, and business issues for telecommunications companies, telco carriers, telecommunications providers. Since joining NTIA, I've worked on the BTOP program, serving as a federal program officer, also worked on the administrative closeout of the BTOP program, and that was a $4 billion grant program under the American Reinvestment and Recovery Act. I've also served as a manager of the Broadband USA Technical Assistance Team. And then, like I said previously, I now serve as the team lead for the Connecting Minority Communities pilot program. Although the bulk of my telecommunications experience is on the legal side, as well as broadband infrastructure deployment, I really look forward to working with the CMC team and the HBCU, TCU, and MSI higher education community in this very important initiative to address access issues, to address connectivity and digital divide issues amongst the HBCU, TCU, and MSI communities. And more importantly, the students, because as we all know, the students are the future of this country. So with that, it is my pleasure to have the other team members introduce themselves. We have a great collection of individuals, and we look forward to working with you in the implementation and execution of this pilot program that is very important to our community.
Hello, everyone. My name is Francine Alkaswani, and I am a member of the Connecting Minority Communities pilot program team. And I'm excited about this particular initiative. I'm happy to be a part of this team and look forward to working with my fellow team members and with all of you. I am a native West Virginian, otherwise called a Ridge Runner. I live in West Virginia now, and probably the most important thing to know about me, paraphrasing E.E. Cummings, is I regard tomorrow as my permanent address. And if you find me there, I'll simply move away still further into now. Thank you. Enjoy the day, and I hope it's a very good session for you.
Hello, my name is Amy Sun, and I am a Senior Broadband Program Specialist and CMC Federal Program Officer at NTIA. I've worked at NTIA for about 12 years, focusing on digital inclusion and digital equity. I'm passionate about helping communities leverage broadband technology to further their own goals. Therefore, I'm so excited to be part of the Connecting Minority Communities program and working with all your institutions and the communities that you serve. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Kevin Hughes, and I'm a Broadband Program Specialist and CMC Federal Program Officer here at NTIA, and proud to be on the Connecting Minority Communities Pilot Program Grant Team, or CMC. I want to welcome you to today's webinar, and I hope that you find this webinar very informative in terms of gleaning information on this wonderful grant that will help to address the digital divide and provide great opportunities across the US for our anchor universities and institutions. Enjoy the webinar.
My name is Karen Archer-Perry, and I'm a Senior Policy Analyst with NTIA. Prior to joining this organization, I worked for more than 20 years at AT&T, Bell Laboratories, and the Lucent family of companies. But I've spent more than a dozen years working in the field of digital inclusion and bridging the digital divide. Much of that work was focused on building solutions at scale. I worked for the FCC, where I contributed to the National Broadband Plan, And I also was pleased to be a program officer at the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, where I worked to improve broadband at public libraries and support librarians as they strengthen their advocacy skills. I've especially enjoyed much of my work at NTIA, where I've got to work directly with people in the field on their local broadband plans. I've learned a lot from the people that I've worked with, and I've also enjoyed sharing some of the best practices that we have at Broadband USA with many of the folks at the field. With the CMC team, I'm looking forward to working with the great team of people that we've assembled here to put the CMC pilot program together, working with our other federal agency partners, and also working with local leaders and higher education in order to develop and execute and support this pilot program. In order to bridge the digital divide, drive economic development and innovation across the country. I have a master's degree in electrical engineering from Cornell, but the foundation of my education is from Cape Cod Community College. So I'm excited that one of my roles on the CMC team will be working with community colleges. A lot's changed since I went to community college, so I'm really looking forward to learning more about what's current in the field and to supporting our community college partners in learning more about this program and in using it to support their goals in the field. I'm also one of the data experts on the team. We have a lot of data experts across our Broadband USC team, people who do a lot of deep data analysis and mapping. My data work is a little bit more practical. I really focus on working with people in the field to understand broadband data and to apply it to their broadband planning work. So I'll be available to help you if I can in any way use data in your work, as well as to help you across any of the broadband plannings of any of our broadband programs in any way that I can. I look forward to working with you on all of our broadband programs. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, I'm Pandora Beasley Timson, Management and Program Analyst with NTIA's CMC Pilot Grant Program. I've been with NTIA for about 12 years, and I'm also a member of the CMC Grants Administration and Oversight Team, as well as one of the primary contacts for merit and programmatic reviews. I am passionate about promoting job growth, economic development, and deploying advanced mobile technologies in distressed communities, primarily in the rural South. I look forward to our work of resolving some of the challenges facing HBCUs, TCUs, and MSIs, all for the betterment of those communities and the vulnerable populations therein. And I'm happy to be a part of this amazing group of talent.
Thank you, Scott, for the opportunity to introduce myself. My name is Janice Wilkins, a broadband program specialist and a CMC federal program officer at NTIA Department of Commerce, downtown DC. I have been working at Commerce for over 10 years and have over 20 years of experience in contracts and grants. I am so excited to be working alongside these amazing people, and more importantly, to help amazing people like you to be successful in this CMC pilot program. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Michelle Morton. I am a broadband program specialist and Connecting Minority Communities Federal Program Officer for NTIA. I'm new to the NTIA team. I have over 15 years of digital inclusion and grants experience. I look forward to working with the stakeholders and our team.
I would like to thank the CMC program team for those introductions. Would also like to note that we have a new CMC team member who will be joining us real soon. Cameron Lewis is indicated here on this chart. And again, he'll be joining us shortly. At this time, I would like to turn it over to Xiaoming Hu of the NIST Grants Office, who will provide an update on the Grants Office function for the CMC pilot program. Ming, over to you.
Thank you, Scott. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon or good morning, depending where you are joining us from. My name is Xiaoming Hu. I'm a grants officer with the National Institute of Standards and Technology in the Grants Management Division. I have been with NIST for almost 6 years. Prior to joining NIST, I was with the Uniformed Services University, where I served as a grant specialist for 7 years and as a financial analyst for 2 years. I have managed quite a few different grants programs at NIST. This is my first time partnering with NTIA to manage the Connecting Minority Communities pilot program. I'm excited about the CMC pilot program and learning about your effort in your communities. I look forward to working with you all. First, I would like to give an overview of who we are in the Office of NIST, and then I will be taking you through the next few slides to provide some helpful resources and introduce some high-level general best practices of the grant administrative requirements. NTIA and NIST are sister agencies under the U.S. Department of Commerce. NIST Grants Office provides grants management services and serves as the grants office for the CMC pilot program. Our grants team consists of 3 main positions: the grants officer and team lead, second grants officer, sub-team lead, and a group of grant specialists. We are very happy and excited to have the opportunity to provide grants management services for the NTIA CMC pilot program, as well as the Broadband Infrastructure Program. I want to spend a little time to talk about the roles of the grants office and the program office. Grants office oversees the business management and administrative aspects of awards. Some of what we do is to evaluate grant applications for compliance with the statutes, regulations, and guidelines, conduct pre-award risk assessment, approve awards and amendments that obligate or de-obligate funds, handle award administration related issues, provide grant administration guidance and financial oversight. For the NTIA program office, one of the main roles is to oversee programmatic and technical aspects of projects. As you learn more about CMC pilot program and begin considering program design, from a grants management perspective, we offer these helpful resources. Grants.gov is a platform to use for most applications for financial assistance. For the CMC final rule, the NOFO will be published to grants.gov. The applicants page offers information and resources to help you prepare for the application process. In order to register in grants.gov, you need to be registered in SAM. We will talk a little bit more in the next slide about application systems. In line with the final rule, we introduced the Uniform Guidance 2 CFR 200 and the Department of Commerce Financial Assistance Policy to include the DLC standard terms and conditions. Lastly, the Federal Audit Clearinghouse maintains a public database of complete audits. While this may not be relevant to all entities, I encourage you to take some time to review the audit requirements in 2 CFR 200. Application systems. As you see on this slide, all of these are necessary to apply. SAM and grants.gov cover technical aspects of the forthcoming application period. We will cover grant-specific administration topics. You can anticipate that you should be registered with SAM, and you know that that may take a few days to confirm. So build that into your timeline. All applicants must register in SAM before submitting a complete application packet in grants.gov. All of these application system steps are necessary to apply to CMC pilot program. So you have to have an entity identifier, UEI. Currently, the DUNS number is official UEI. You have to have an EIN. You need to be registered with SAM. You need to be registered with grants.gov. You have to have the authorized organization representative who is able to submit your application. And finally, application will be submitted through grants.gov. I know that sometimes grants.gov goes down for maintenance. You don't want to wait until the very last minute to submit your application. Now, I'm going to talk a little bit about administrative requirements. The grants office role is partially to monitor and ensure non-federal entity compliance with the terms and conditions of the award. In general, DLC awards are subject to these administrative requirements: uniform guidance, DLC standard terms and conditions, specific award conditions. The uniform guidance, or 2 CFR 200, is the streamlined government-wide framework for grants management. Subpart A includes acronyms and definitions used throughout the uniform guidance. Consider referencing these as you explore other subparts. Administrative requirements are covered in subparts B through D. Section C, you can learn about the general pre-award risk assessment requirements. Subpart D discuss post-federal award requirements such as statutory and national policy requirements, financial management, and internal controls. Remember, our intent today is to share information that can be helpful as you consider federal financial assistance. Subpart E outlines the cost principle, discuss basic consideration of costs such as cost reasonableness, allowability, and ultimately allowability. Here you will read specifics about direct and indirect costs, as well as special consideration for institutions of higher education. And lastly, you will find general provisions for selected items of cost. Subpart F covers audit requirements for non-federal entity expending federal awards. While this may not be new to you or your organization, we hope you find this refresher helpful. While the 2 CFR 200 layout is in chronological order in relation to the federal award life cycle, the DLC terms and conditions are divided by sections. I'm just going to name a few here. Section A, programmatic requirements. Section B, financial requirements. Section C, internal controls, and so on. As I mentioned earlier, in general, the DLC terms and conditions applies to the DLC financial assistance awards. Lastly, specific award conditions are incorporated to financial assistance awards. Allow me to elaborate on one section of the uniform guidance, cost allowability in subpart E. All costs must be necessary for the performance of the award. Costs must not be prohibited by statute. The cost principles in 2 CFR 200 subpart E, another regulation, program guidance, or the terms of the award. Costs must be reasonable. A cost does not exceed that which would be incurred by a prudent person at the time the decision was made to incur the cost. That is prudent person test. Costs must be allocable. Costs incurred either directly or indirectly to carry out the scope of work. Costs must be allowable. A cost meets the criteria for authorized expenditure in the federal cost principles. That is necessary and reasonable for the performance of the award and not otherwise specifically prohibited. The 2 CFR 200 talks about financial management standards for the federal award. I want to highlight a few here. The non-federal entity must have and maintain an adequate financial management system. The financial system must be able to provide records that adequately document the source and application of funds for the funded activities, as well as for reporting requirement and be able to provide comparison of expenditures against the approved budget. The non-federal entity must also have written procedures and procurement policies that meet the requirements under this section and have an effective internal controls over the federal award. Also, the non-federal entity is responsible for adequate monitoring of sub-recipient activities. It is important to have procedures and for sub-award monitoring and management that meet the requirements for pass-through entity. And finally, the financial management must be in compliance with the terms and conditions of the award. I want to thank you for joining us here today. Now I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Scott Woods, and thank you, everyone.
thank you, Ming, for that update on the NIST Grants Office. We thank you and your team, and we look forward to working with you in the implementation and execution of the CMC pilot program. So right now, everyone, I want to transition to a brief update on the CMC dashboard. And I want to thank those of you who have provided feedback on the CMC Anchor Community Eligibility Dashboard. And I just want you to know that we've identified some sort of minor flaws and limitations in the data. And I just mind you again to note the caveat on the About tab of the dashboard. But again, we've identified that except for Puerto Rico, the CMC dashboard does not contain American Community Survey data, the census tract data on median income, median household income, and median household size for US territories, including those independent nations that are in a compact or free association with the US. So what does that mean? They're not reflected, at least their anchor community boundary is not reflected in the CMC dashboard, but the schools that classify as one of the eligible institutions, right, either an HBCU or one of the subcategories of MSIs, they are included visually in the dashboard. So you have some examples here of those territories that are impacted. For the USVI, it actually, the University of the Virgin Islands conducts the census survey for the territory. And so, again, you will see this in the NOFO, there will be an opportunity, for a territory to submit its own census tract data or latest census tract data if the data is otherwise disputed or otherwise unavailable. So again, ACS data is not reflected in the map. So therefore, when you go to the dashboard, those territories aren't listed in the toolbox or toolbar up at the top of the dashboard. Again, we understand that, we're working on that, but again, you'll be able to address those in the application process, with the exception for Puerto Rico that does have census tract based information from the ACS data. Number two, the previous version of the dashboard had certain MSI designations from the Department of Education's eligibility matrix. They were deemed either 4R or 5R as religious institutions, right? Those designated schools would be eligible for grant funding if they did not have, if they had, non-religious or vocational curriculum. Otherwise, the Department of Education has deemed these institutions not eligible for federal funding. So again, these schools were reflected visually in the CMC dashboard. We have since removed those. And again, if you have any questions about that, you can reach out to me personally, and we can discuss that methodology. And then finally, another limitation or flaw that we fixed in certain circumstances for certain states, there was a data entry limitation under the school names, the drop-down box on the CMC toolbar, and that would prevent you from selecting the school in the drop-down box and then having a corresponding list under the list tab of all of those impacted census tracts, right? This only impacted certain schools and states that had MSI designated schools in one particular category that exceeded the current data entry limit of 100. We have since fixed that. We've increased that data entry limit. And so now all of those schools should be available to access on the toolbar, which then effectuates the list tab for the individual census tract data information. So I hope that information is helpful to you. If you have any questions about the methodology or any other flaws or limitations that you've uncovered in your use and utilization of the CMC Anchor Community Eligibility Dashboard, please feel free to reach out to me and let me know. Again, we thank you. It's been overwhelming positive feedback on the dashboard. So continue to use it. And again, if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. And so now I'm going to, again, go through another demo of the CMC Anchor Community Eligibility Dashboard. Again, if you want a full explanation of the tool, You can visit our previous webinar where we actually did the full-blown demo. But for those of you who may not have been able to view that, I'm going to do a short demo for you right now. We'll put a link to the dashboard in the chat. You can also visit our website, and information on the dashboard should be up on our website very soon. But again, just by way of overview, if you go to the About tab that has our legal caveats about the limitations of this tool, it has an overview of the methodology that we use. And again, this is our application of the Anchor Community Eligibility Standard as contained in the Act and the CMC Final Rule. Again, the application of the 250% poverty threshold, as well as a discussion on the margin of error for the data contained therein, specifically with the ACS data, median household income, and household size. So really quickly, if you go and look at the tab up here at the top, you can select the school type, the state, and then the school name. The school eligibility type will vary by the eligible institutions types of the CMC pilot program. So you'll see Anapeasy schools, you'll also see Alaska Native Hawaiian schools, you'll also see the HBCUs, you can also see HSIs, as well as the Native American serving non-tribal institutions. You will also see the predominantly Black institutions, and then finally, all of the tribal institutions, particularly with that alternative approach that we talked about in the CMC Final Rule and the methodology that's contained therein. So let's go to this example. I want to go to HSIs. I want to go to Georgia. And then I want to select, again, Dalton State College. And again, you want to utilize the toolbar here up at the top and then hit the corresponding list tab. And again, that will show you all of the applicable census tracts that are eligible for CMC programming and funding within Dalton State College's 15-mile anchor community boundary. So again, those highlighted census tracts are those areas indeed that are eligible, meaning that they do not exceed 250% of the poverty threshold, and our application of that rule is reflected in this tool. So again, if you click on a particular census tract, information on that census tract will pop up: median household income, the household size, the poverty threshold number, the 250% poverty threshold calculation, a determination of whether that particular census tract will qualify for CMC, and again, information about the school type, the school name, and the Department of Education ID number. So you get all that information in there. If you're not really used to a point and click, and you want to use this, toolbar over here, this list tab, it lists from numeric order, from lowest census tract household income information all the way to the highest. So again, you'll start here, and if you click on it and look on the visualization, you'll see the census tract will highlight itself in purple. So again, if you want to change the view, the base map view here in the image, you can go to this base map tab here, and you can change the various views of the imagery of the base maps. Right now, it's a topographic view, but you can go to street view. You can do a satellite view or some sort of image hybrid view to see the census tracts. Again, whatever you're comfortable with, you can do. So for purposes of this demo, I have the topographic view on. If you have some questions about the other surrounding census tracts and the information regarding their household size or their median household income, you can utilize this layers tab over here. Then I can turn on all of the median household income for all of the tracts, and then they'll highlight there. And then I'll be able to see, again, for this particular census tract, I get the median household income in this area. I get a view of it by age. And if I hit this arrow, I will also get a view by race. So again, 51,455. I know that's the median household income level. I can go here and look at the household size. And again, even if I do a back of the envelope calculation, this median household income for this household size would be above the median, the poverty level, the poverty threshold level for the CMC program, and therefore this census tract, or all of the gray area census tracts do not qualify. If I go back to the original view and turn off the household tracts and turn off the median size and median income tracts, again, I only get those census tracts that indeed qualify, right? So for purposes of a consortium applicant, the school, has to be the leader on that, but it can partner with a minority business enterprise or a tax-exempt 501c3 organization and can do specific, programming and funding in these neighborhoods designated by these census tracts. And again, the school can do this as well to the extent that their students are located in these neighborhoods and census tracts as well. So again, if you have any questions about the Anchor Community Eligibility Dashboard, please don't hesitate to reach out. I want to do one more example really quick. I touched on this on the last one. This is in reference to all of the tribal colleges and universities contained in the dashboard. So if you recall, if you look at the methodology in the final rule, and I touched on this a little bit in the first demo, but you will see certain tribal areas, tribal college areas, that anchor community eligibility varies, right? In some cases, it is the traditional 15-mile radius. In others, it is not. So again, if you refer back to the act, and again, the final rule, Congress demanded, if you will, and requested that NTI come up with and develop an alternative methodology for the anchor community eligibility standard to ensure that the areas around the tribal colleges for land held in trust, that it was an applicable, comparable anchor community standard with the traditional 15-mile radius. So I just wanted to highlight that for those specific impacted tribal schools, in fact, that we've done that. So you see that is a reason for the variance between those tribal institutions that have the 15-mile radius, and for those that have a boundary that is indeed larger. We have accommodated and addressed that requirement. If you have any questions about any of the methodological approaches that we have that are reflected, in this dashboard, you can refer to the final rule. We outline and outlay these specific approaches, the data sets used, the assumptions. It's all laid out in the final rule. And then you can see that again reflected here in the CMC dashboard. So with that said, I'm going to turn it over to Tim Moyer, who's going to talk about our broadband indicators map. And then Gilbert will come back on and he will take us back all the way through the merit review and then ultimately through our Q&A. So thank you for the opportunity to be here with you today, and I will turn it over to Tim.
So my name is Tim Moyer. I'm the Director of Data and Mapping here at NTIA, and I'll be providing an overview of our new Indicators of Broadband Need Map. So over the next few slides, you're going to see examples of the indicators of need data that we've included in the map. I'm going to dig into those in detail, so just want to provide an overview here, and then we'll transition into the demo of the map itself. So you can see speed tests. We have American Community Survey data. And at this point, I'm going to share my screen and take over. And so we start here at NTIA's Broadband USA website. We select resources, go to data and mapping, and we come to the public map and tools section. And we've got an overview here, and then we can go directly to the map itself. So the Indicators of Broadband Need interactive map was designed to bring multiple third-party data sources together to help the public better understand the digital divide and the connection between poverty and lack of broadband access or use. So I'm going to provide a high-level overview of the the map so we can see how to navigate, and then I'm going to dig into the details. So when you first turn on the map, you're going to get this pop-up screen here that provides explanation of what the map is. We'll select OK. Here we have the different indicators of need. You'll see that we have data at the county, the census tract, and the census block. We also have supporting information here from minority serving institutions and tribal lands. And as we dig into the details, I want you to keep an eye down here, because when we zoom into different levels of geography, you'll see that this will change. And interestingly, the pop-ups will change also. It's a dynamic map. If we look at our legend, red is an indicator of need. Green means lack of an indicator of need. And gray means there's no data. We also have for our minority serving institutions color-coded by institution type. And we can see here how the tribal lands will be displayed. Over here, we have a filter that enables us to toggle individual MSI types on and off. And I'll show you that in action in a little bit. And in our information section, we have an overview about the map. An important disclaimer here, the data presented is as is. We've collected third-party data. This is not data that NTI generated ourselves. And so we're bringing that data together in a meaningful way. We've provided a way to access the underlying aggregated data that supports the map. And we provided layer by layer descriptions with links back to the source material. Over here, you'll see a user guide. Again, we have information about the data layers themselves. And then for folks that aren't as familiar with GIS, this is a commercial off-the-shelf software package. And so we've got some instructions about how to do some basic GIS navigating in all the different sections here. We also have an FAQs document, frequently asked questions, for things that folks may find interesting. And this will be a living document that will grow over time. So let's go back to the map. So what's interesting with GIS is layering. And so you'll see here that we have all of these layers toggled on right now. I'm going to turn a few of them off and then talk about them individually. So we start with the 477 data. And the way we presented this is that we know that 477 data is presented at the census block, and the methodology is that if anybody in the census block is served, the whole block is served. And so that can lead to overstatement of broadband availability in some areas. So what we wanted to do is find out the areas where the broadband providers themselves have identified in the 477 reporting that they don't have services that meet the 25.3 threshold. And so you'll see here that the areas in red don't have 25.3 infrastructure. If we look at the Microsoft usage data, and think of this as machine-to-machine type data, where when we're asleep at night, if you have a Microsoft product, it connects to the internet and it downloads security software and things like that. Microsoft has a way to measure the speed on the download. And so what we're saying here is that 75% or more of the people in the county that use Microsoft services are not downloading at 25 meg. And so when we turn that on, you'll see that the areas that got more red reinforce the 477 data, but we also see lots of areas where the Microsoft data suggests that there are other areas that may not be at 25.3. So I'll toggle this back off and you can see the 477 data. And then when you bring the Microsoft data on, it's a little bit different picture. If we look at Measurement Lab, the Measurement Lab is crowdsourced speed test data. We see a similar story at the county level, where it reinforces some of the 477 data, but also highlights areas that potentially are an indicator of need. And when you combine all three together, you really see a reinforcing. And it's important to note that NTIA recognizes that there is no silver bullet single data set that's going to answer all these questions. There are challenges with any crowdsourced data set. So it's the layering of multiple data sets that reinforces and gives you more confidence as areas become more red that that's something worth digging into. Now we'll look at the census tract level. We have UCLA speed test data. And you'll see that the UCLA also has lots of pockets that weren't identified in the 477 data, but also reinforces the 477 data. I'm going to turn that off, and we're going to turn over our attention to some of the survey data from Census's American Community Survey. If we see here, we're saying that 25% of the households report that they don't have internet access at all. And in this, we see that 25% of households say that they don't have some sort of computer device, either a computer, a laptop, a phone that's connected to the internet. This down here is very interesting. If you look at the poverty data set, and so it's going to take a second to render, but we have 20% or more of households are below the poverty line. And you're going to see a really interesting correlation here when I start turning on the tribal lands and the minority serving institutions. Minority serving institutions follow the poverty line. Similarly, you're going to see the tribal lands populate here. Now, I mentioned that the minority serving institutions, we have the ability to filter. So I'm going to go over here, and maybe I want to see HBCUs, or maybe I want to see tribal colleges. Depending on what your specific use case is, you can toggle things on and off and investigate. So I'm going to go back here, and I'm going to turn these back off. And I'm going to go back with the 477 and the UCLA. Now, everything we've done so far is at a macro national level, but we have the ability to zoom into areas. And so I'll ask you again to keep an eye over here as the county track and census block will let you know the level of geography we're at. But I'm going to go look at East Carroll Parish in Louisiana. And I'm going to click here. And you'll see that we're at the county level. In the search results, if I click here, it's going to bring up a pop-up of information. A few things that are interesting here. One, it's dynamic from the perspective that it doesn't matter which layers I have turned on, the pop-up will have information that's available at that level of geography. And so we'll see here that we're looking at Issaquena County, and we also have East Carroll Parish, because at this level of geography, there were two in that general area. So looking at East Carroll Parish, we see that we have close to 7,000 people. The survey data says that 55% of the households in this area don't have internet access. Close to 52% don't have some kind of computer device. We see that the MLab data actually says that at the county level, we do have 25.3. It looks at 28 and 9 roughly. The UCLA speed test data is slightly lower in the 18.8 range. And then we see that Microsoft is saying that the data there is saying that 10% aren't getting over 25 megabits on the download. What gets interesting now is if I zoom in and I go to a lower level of geography. And as I zoom in here, you saw down here that we changed to the tract. And so the pop-up now changed to the tract. And now it's focused on the layers that have tract level detail. And so again, we see here at Issaquena County, about a little over 1,000 people in that county. ACS is saying 58% without internet access, 45% without some kind of computer device. And the UCLA speed test at this level of granularity is telling us 8 and 3. So certainly not 25.3. And then as we zoom to a little bit more, we're going to see that it'll change to the census block. It's taken a second here. Apologies for the lack of performance. And now you saw that the tract and the census block was activated. And so now when I click in here, I'm going to have census block information. So I see the 477 data, and I also see the census tract data. So this is all visualization, a way to navigate through the map. I mentioned that we also have the ability to download the data itself. And so what we've done here is provide 3 levels of geography. I'm going to go with the county as an example. And we can download this. Bring it up. I can go here and do a nice simple filter. And then I can go find that data set. So we'll go back to Louisiana here. Hit OK. And now we'll go to East Carroll. Click on that. And we'll see that all that data is here. Number of households, don't have a computer, poverty level, Ookla data, population, the MLab data. And so depending on whether or not you want a visualization or you want to use this aggregated data for different reasons, it's all right there. That was important to us to be able to provide that underlying data.
Thank you. And next, I will go over our NTIA's call for merit reviewers for our grant programs and then discuss the next steps of the Connecting Minority Communities pilot program. As we've mentioned on previous webinars, NTIA has put out a call for merit reviewers for all of our programs. If you're interested in serving as a merit reviewer for the Connecting Minority Communities pilot program, please send your resume along that, making sure that it includes the information on the screen to grant reviewer at ntia.gov. If you have any questions about serving as a merit reviewer, you can also email grantreviewer@ntia.gov. I'd also like to point out that we have worked with our attorneys and internal processes here at NTIA to ensure that if you'd like to serve as a merit reviewer and apply for one of our programs, you can. If you have questions about that process, please email us and we're happy to discuss further. Next, I'd like to go over the next steps for the Connecting Minority Communities pilot program. Previously in June, we published the final rules for this program, and we have put out a call for merit reviewers and did stakeholder outreach and provided pre-application technical assistance. The next step is to publish the Notice of Funding Opportunity, or NOFO, and we are committed to having that NOFO published by mid-August. It is currently working its way through the clearance process, but we are very committed to having that published by mid-August. And with that, I'd like to thank everyone for joining us today on our Connecting Minority Communities pilot program webinar, and I will open it up and invite our presenters back for our Q&A session. Thank you.
Hello. Audio issues there. Hello. Thank you again for everyone for joining us. My name is Gilbert Resendez, and I will be your moderator and host for today. I believe I have joined with me Scott Woods, Senior Broadband Program Specialist with NTIA, Kevin Hughes, a Broadband Program Specialist with NTIA, and then Xiaoming Hu, Grants Officer with NIST for our Q&A session. So
Yes,
why don't we go ahead and get...
Sorry about that.
Oh, thank you, Scott. No, it's okay. Yeah, so we're, like Scott, I think was starting to say, we apologize for some of the technical difficulties we're having. We're here on the audio bridge. Unfortunately, we are not able to hop in on video today. I guess we'll go ahead and get started on our Q&A session. Scott?
Yes, I'm ready. Thank you. A number of
Perfect.
questions I
Want to
see
make sure.
come in. Go ahead. Thank you. Sorry.
Yeah, you're welcome. So I'll just take care of some of the first few questions at the top, kind of more general programmatic questions. The first one was, is if the information provided in today's webinar is different than the information provided in yesterday's webinar? And the answer to that is no, it's the same webinar that we hosted. I guess the biggest difference is that we were not able to appear today on video for the Q&A, but otherwise it's the same, just another option for live Q&A. And then these slides, a recording of the webinar and transcript will be posted next week on the Broadband USA website under events, past events. And then a question for you, Scott, is if you would be able to post the URL to the Connecting Minority Communities tool that you were demonstrating on the webinar, or the Indicators of Broadband Need map on the into the chat. If you could, that would be very helpful for our audience to ask for that. So let's go ahead and go off with the next set of questions. The first one is for you, Scott. When do you expect the NOFO to be issued?
Thank you, Gilbert. And for your previous question, I did post the CMC, link to the CMC dashboard and a link to the Indicators of Broadband Need, the map, public map, as I call it, into the chat. With respect to the NOFO, as I stated yesterday, we're expect the NOFO any day now. So we're talking days, not weeks. And I encourage people to stay logged into our website, visit our website for updates. But we expect the NOFO to be issued here very, very shortly.
Great, thank you very much, Scott. And then I guess the next question, just more generally about the CMC pilot program, is once the NOFO is issued, about how long will applicants have to respond and submit their applications to the program?
Yeah, so we proposed, and thank you for that question. We've proposed 90 to 120 days. So we're planning on 120-day application period, meaning that application window from when the NOFO posts to when the applications would be due would be 120 days from the posting or the availability of the CMC NOFO.
Great, thank you very much. We'll go ahead and ask some eligibility questions regarding institutions of higher education. I know that, so as we talked about in the webinar and we discussed in the final rule, is that institutions of higher education that are classified as HBCUs, TCUs, or other minority serving institutions are eligible applicants to this program, provided they meet the other eligibility requirements. But there are a number of those institutions that may have satellite campuses or other affiliated campuses. How does that work with the application process for this grant program?
Sorry, Gilbert, I missed part of that. There's some distortion in my audio on my end. I apologize for that. Could you repeat that question again, please?
Oh, no worries. Yeah, I'm happy to restate that question. Institutions of higher education are one of the eligible groups, provided that they are historically Black colleges and universities, tribal colleges and universities, or some other type of minority serving institution. Given that many of those institutions may have satellite campuses or satellite centers that are still affiliated with a main campus, how does that work when applying for this application or assessing the service area within the 15-mile radius?
Yeah, thank you. That came in clear. Thank you. And again, everyone, we do apologize for the technical difficulties of the platform today. It's unavoidable, but as you all know, in this era of COVID and online platforms, if it's going to go wrong, it will go wrong. So please be patient with us. That's a good question. So for the purposes, and we explain and we outline this in the CMC final rule, if those want to, are so inclined to read upon our methodology. But for satellite campuses, particularly as these schools report to the U.S. Department of Education, the satellite campus has to be truly independent. If it is an independent campus location, may have the same name, but reports differently, reports separately to the Department of Education, then it can submit an application, its own application to the CMC pilot program. If it is a branch campus of the main campus location, and unfortunately is outside of that 15-mile radius, I would ask the program folks to give us a call and let's walk through that scenario. But generally, again, with the 15-mile radius, the programming and the funding, has to occur within that, as the statute calls it, the anchor community boundary. But again, I would ask if that is indeed the case, please give us a contact, give us a call, email, and we'll walk through your particular case with you.
Great, thank you, Scott. Another quite more general programmatic question is, I saw coming through the chat, is what is the process to meet with the NTIA specialist most aligned with a potential applicant business or I guess application proposition? What process do they do to get in touch with an NTIA person?
So at the end of this presentation, and we'll also put it in the chat, but our email address is available. You can email us directly. And we've been scheduling outreach. We've been scheduling pre-application technical assistance, either with the program team or with individual members of the team. So please feel free to email us.
Great, thank you. Going back to some of the eligibility questions and questions about the CMC dashboard, if a school does not see their institution listed, how would they go about inquiring more or seeing if they can get that corrected?
Yep, that's another good question. I answered a couple of those in the chat. So first of all, when we first developed the dashboard, as we outlined in the final rule, the current data that was available in part was from the Department of Education's 2020 eligibility matrix. It has since very recently updated that. Is now a 2021 eligibility matrix that is available, and we will be updating the CMC dashboard to reflect that data in the 2021 eligibility matrix. However, there are, again, a school can be designated as one of the subtypes of MSIs and still, according to the Department of Education's determination, not be eligible for federal funding. So again, just being a designated MSI school does not necessarily mean that you would be eligible for federal funding. If there is a case where you think the information is incorrect, I've asked you to give us a call, give me an email. I'll put my email in the chat again. You can email me directly. We can do a quick evidentiary review and get back to you. Again, as we put in the caveat for the tool is not perfect. There are some glitches and issues sometimes that we uncover. And again, if your data is readily available, and we definitely will issue a correction. And I also want to say again, don't just rely on the dashboard, right? We outline the methodology. You can conduct your own review and research. All of the data sources are publicly available. And again, so we will make sure that we work with you. But again, we will do our best to update the dashboard in a quick and timely fashion based on this new 2021 eligibility matrix data that the Department of Education just recently released.
Great, thank you very much, Scott. And then there was a few questions in the Q&A box about some general confusion around the discussion around on household income as it relates to the eligibility of certain institutions. This question I'm looking at right now says specifically TCUs, but I was just wondering if you or Kevin could speak more to that part of the final rule in the program.
Oh, yes, thank you. And we did outline this in the final rule, and this goes back to one of the statutory requirements in the Consolidated Appropriations Act. So without going into too much painstaking detail, but there's a process by which we determine the 15-mile radius and the anchor community eligibility area. All right, so for each census tract within that area, based on the median household income and median household size, those census tracts cannot be more than 250% above the poverty threshold to qualify for the CMC pilot program. And however, but for certain schools, particularly for tribal colleges or universities that are located on land held in trust by the United States government, Congress directed us to come up with a comparative or comparable methodological approach to that anchor community boundary analysis, right? We've done that. It's reflected in both the CMC final rule and the dashboard. So it's just an alternative approach for certain tribal schools that are located on land held in trust, again, to ensure, for equal distribution standpoint, we can compare applicable, anchor community areas to that general 15-mile area boundary that's established in the CMC pilot program.
Great, thank you very much. And then there were some questions around eligible expenses for the program. Are funds able to be used for operating expenses, such as monthly internet access fees?
So good, another good question. And again, I hate doing this. We've been punting to the NOFO because the NOFO will have all of the programmatic details and information that you'll need. So I would ask you just hold on to that question. The NOFO will be coming out very shortly. Our webinar session in August 18th and 19th, will be dedicated to a review of the NOFO with programmatic examples of program activities and allowable costs. So stay tuned for that. The NOFO will be coming out shortly, and our programming, CMC webinar programming, will definitely address allowable costs, program examples, and the like. So stay tuned.
Great, thank you very much. I know another common question we tend to get on this program is if the funds for this program can be used for community connectivity, is connectivity costs or fees related to off-campus connectivity eligible? Can you speak more to that this time?
So I'm sorry, I came in jar, but I think you were talking about can this program apply to providing blanket access of connectivity from a service provider to an eligible area. So no, from an infrastructure standpoint, there's no blanket allowance for extending service provider, infrastructure services, broadband services to an area. Again, what is allowable, if you will, the program is designed for the distribution and availability of devices for connectivity on behalf of MBEs, minority business enterprises, or certain tax-exempt 501c3 organizations. Connectivity for those for their operational or programming purposes, but not for to connect an entire community. And again, on our August 18th and 19th webinar, we'll do a really good job with providing you with what is allowable in terms from both programming and cost for the program.
Great, thank you very much, Scott. That's another great plug for our next August webinar. So if folks haven't registered for that webinar, we encourage you to register, as we'll have more information and updates there. And apologies if there are any audio difficulties right now. We do not anticipate seeing these technical difficulties. I see a few more questions coming into the chat, Scott. Another one around eligibility for either you or Kevin. Is a private historically Black college or university that has a religious affiliation eligible?
We need to know the name of the school. So that's a pretty amorphous hypothetical. Yeah, just, again, it's not necessarily a religious affiliation. The Department of Education has made certain funding eligibility decision on the actual instruction and vocation programming and teaching of the institution. So again, if you have any questions about any specific schools, please feel free to reach out to us. And again, we can do some investigation and give you a precise answer.
Great, thank you. I know a common question we tend to get is how each school can apply as consortia and how overlapping 15-mile radiuses work. As you know, some cities, like here in Washington, D.C., there are a number of minority serving institutions that may have overlapping 15-mile radii. How does that work with our program?
So we do understand in certain areas there are schools that are located near each other and have overlapping anchor community boundaries. So they will share, qualified census tracts within that anchor community boundary. But again, we do understand that there will be, that these schools will talk to each other, will collaborate, but for purposes of submitting an application for CMC funding, we don't allow, the program does not allow, a joint application, if you will. So what school A puts forth is what school A will be evaluated on, even if there is some overlap with what school B puts forth. Now, again, programmatically, if certain funding decisions were made, and we understand that after the funding decisions were made, we understand there's duplication in certain census tracts, then we would reach out to the principals to resolve that programmatically. But that will be done, again, at a much later date and time. For the purposes of the application, though, each school is responsible for its own application. We do understand, though, practically, schools do communicate, they do collaborate, they do exchange information and data. And again, we still encourage schools to do so.
Great, thank you very much, Scott. There was a question that says, I do not see areas in the tool, I'm assuming the CMC dashboard that was demonstrated, for Native American serving institutions that border the Navajo Nation identified as anchor communities. It sounds like, again, if folks have questions, you can always reach out to Scott by his email that he's provided, or we'll have on the following slide, or the general Broadband USA email. We can get that answered or cleared up for you.
Absolutely, and in our outreach too, we've actually done individual demos of the tool and have walked folks through, organizations and their members through the tool and our methodology, and so we welcome that opportunity to do so. So for folks that have questions, about the tool or maybe don't really understand it, please, give us shoot us an email, send us an email rather, and we can schedule some one-on-one time with you and your organization to walk you through that. Again, we want you to understand, the methodological approach, but also how to utilize the dashboard tool as well.
Great, thank you very much, Scott. With that, I think we will start our wrap up. So thank you very much to Scott, to Kevin, and to Ming for sticking around for the Q&A session, as well as to the entire CMC team, and Tim Moyer, who also presented on this webinar. Like I said at the top of the webinar, the slides, the transcript, and a recording for this webinar will be posted on the Broadband USA website under the past events page by August 5th. We have information on the Connecting Minority Communities pilot program, as well as the other two grant programs that were authorized under the Consolidated Appropriations Act on the Broadband USA website. We have provided Scott's email as well as Francine Alkaswani, who is on the team, the CMC team, their emails here on the slide, as well as the general Broadband USA email if you have questions. That's broadbandusa@ntia.doc.gov. We've also provided some helpful links on the Anchor Community Eligibility Dashboard and the Indicators of Broadband Need Map, which are both demonstrated on today's webinar. I think I have one more slide. Yeah, thank you very much. Like I've said, a recording of this webinar will be available on August 5th on the Broadband USA website. We also have past recordings of the webinars from this webinar series on the grants programs authorized under the Consolidated Appropriations Act. You'll see them for the Broadband Infrastructure Program, Tribal Broadband Connectivity Program, and this, the Connecting Minority Communities Pilot Program, our past schedule with links to those past webinars, which now live on our website, and then a schedule of the upcoming webinars. You'll see that the Connecting Minority Communities Pilot Program webinar series will run through the end of October. All of these webinars start at 2:30 p.m. Eastern. You can find the schedule of those events on our website under upcoming events. With that, those are all the updates I have. Thank you for joining us. We really appreciate you joining us here this afternoon or morning, wherever you are. Thank you.